Have you ever wondered why some of the most insightful people you know seem to fly completely under the radar? Why they sit quietly in meetings while others take credit for ideas that sound suspiciously similar to what they mentioned weeks ago? If you're an INFJ or know someone who is, you've probably witnessed this puzzling behavior firsthand. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most intriguing aspects of the INFJ personality, why they consistently allow others to underestimate them, even when they possess incredible depth, wisdom, and capabilities that could easily command respect and recognition. 1. The paradox of the invisible powerhouse. Let's start with something that'll blow your mind. INFJs make up only 1 to 3% of the population, yet they're often the ones quietly shaping the world behind the scenes. Think about it. They're the counselors who help people transform their lives, the writers who pen the stories that move millions, the activists who spark social change from the shadows. But here's the kicker: most people have no clue about their true impact. This isn't by accident. INFJs have developed a complex relationship with recognition and visibility that goes way deeper than simple shyness or introversion. They've mastered the art of being simultaneously present and invisible, influential yet underestimated. It's like they're wearing an invisibility cloak in plain sight, and honestly, they prefer it that way. The thing is, when you're wired differently from 97% of the population, you learn pretty quickly that standing out isn't always safe. INFJs have learned to navigate the world by blending in, by letting others shine while they work their magic from the sidelines. But why would someone with such incredible insight and capability choose to remain in the background? 2. The energy economics of being misunderstood. Here's something most people don't get about INFJs. They're constantly doing energy calculations in their heads. Every social interaction, every explanation, every attempt to be understood costs them precious mental and emotional resources. When you're dealing with complex inner worlds and deep insights that most people can't relate to, explaining yourself becomes exhausting. Think about it this way: imagine you're trying to describe the color blue to someone who's never seen color. That's what it feels like for an INFJ trying to explain their thought processes to most people. They've learned through experience that it's often easier to let people make assumptions than to invest the enormous energy required to be truly understood. This energy conservation isn't laziness, it's survival. INFJs need their energy for the things that matter most to them: their creative projects, helping others, processing the complex emotions they pick up from everyone around them. When you're naturally empathic and constantly absorbing other people's feelings, you can't afford to waste energy on people who aren't genuinely interested in understanding you anyway. 3. The protective shield of low expectations. Now here's where it gets really interesting. INFJs have discovered something brilliant. When people underestimate you, they leave you alone. It's like having a protective shield that keeps shallow relationships at bay while allowing the right people to find you. When you don't broadcast your capabilities, you don't attract energy vampires, users, or people who want to exploit your talents without giving anything back. This strategic invisibility serves multiple purposes. First, it filters out people who are only interested in what you can do for them. Second, it creates space for authentic connections to develop naturally. When someone takes the time to really see an INFJ despite their tendency to downplay themselves, that person has passed a significant test. INFJs have learned that being underestimated is often safer than being accurately perceived. When people expect less from you, they don't make demands on your time and energy. They don't try to put you in boxes or expect you to perform in ways that drain your soul. You get to choose when and how to reveal your true capabilities, which gives you back control in a world that often feels overwhelming. 4. The fear of being pigeonholed. One of the biggest reasons INFJs let people underestimate them is their deep fear of being reduced to a single dimension. These are people with incredibly complex inner worlds, multiple interests, and the ability to see connections that others miss. The last thing they want is to be known for just one thing or to have their entire identity reduced to their most visible talent. When an INFJ shows their full capabilities too early or too obviously, people tend to put them in neat little categories. Oh, you're the creative one. You're the therapist friend. You're the spiritual one. While these labels might seem positive, they feel incredibly limiting to someone whose personality contains multitudes. By allowing themselves to be underestimated, INFJs maintain their freedom to be complex, contradictory, and multifaceted. They can be deeply spiritual and thoroughly logical, incredibly empathetic and surprisingly analytical, gentle and fierce all at the same time. When people don't have fixed expectations, there's room to be authentically human in all its messy, beautiful complexity. 5. The authenticity paradox. Here's something that might surprise you. INFJs often feel most authentic when they're being underestimated. Sounds backward, right? But think about it. When you're not performing or trying to prove yourself, when you're not managing other people's expectations or impressions, you can just be. There's incredible freedom in that space where nobody's watching or judging your every move. This doesn't mean they're being fake or hiding who they are. Instead, they're choosing to reveal themselves selectively on their own terms. They'd rather be genuinely known by a few people than superficially admired by many. This approach to relationships reflects their core values: depth over breadth, quality over quantity, authenticity over performance. The paradox is that in allowing themselves to be underestimated by most people, they create space for the kind of deep, meaningful connections they actually crave. It's like they're saying, if you can't see my worth when I'm not trying to impress you, then you're probably not my person anyway. 6. The Perfectionists' Dilemma. INFJs are notorious perfectionists, but not in the way most people think. They're not perfectionist about external achievements or appearances. They're perfectionist about authenticity, meaning, and emotional truth. This creates a unique dilemma when it comes to self-presentation. When you hold yourself to impossibly high standards of authenticity, sharing your work or ideas before they feel ready can be agony. Many INFJs have brilliant insights, creative projects, or solutions to problems, but they won't share them until they've been refined to perfection. By the time they're ready to speak up, someone else has already presented a less developed version of the same idea and gotten the credit. This perfectionist tendency also makes them hypercritical of their own performance in social situations. They'll replay conversations for days, analyzing every word, wondering if they came across as authentic or if they inadvertently misrepresented themselves. It's often easier to say nothing and let people draw their own conclusions than to risk the internal torture of imperfect self-expression. 7. The observer's advantage. INFJs have learned that there's incredible power in being underestimated because it turns them into invisible observers. When people don't see you as a threat or competition, they let their guard down around you. They share information they wouldn't normally share, reveal their true motivations, and show you who they really are beneath the social masks. This observer status is pure gold for someone with INFJ's natural abilities. They're already incredibly perceptive, naturally picking up on subtle cues and hidden dynamics that others miss. When you add the advantage of being underestimated, they become like social anthropologists, gathering invaluable information about human nature and group dynamics. This information isn't used manipulatively. INFJs are too ethical for that. Instead, it helps them navigate complex social situations, understand what's really going on beneath the surface, and position themselves strategically. They can choose when to speak up with maximum impact because they've been quietly observing and understanding the real dynamics at play. 8. The imposter syndrome connection. Here's something that hits close to home for many INFJs. They often struggle with imposter syndrome in ways that compound their tendency to be underestimated. Even when they have legitimate expertise or insight, they question whether they really deserve recognition or whether their success is just luck. This internal doubt makes them reluctant to claim credit for their achievements or to put themselves forward for opportunities. They're more likely to attribute their successes to external factors rather than their own capabilities. When someone compliments their work, they deflect. When opportunities arise, they question whether they're qualified enough. The tragic irony is that INFJs often have imposter syndrome precisely because they're so competent. They're aware of how much they don't know, conscious of the complexity of most situations, and honest about their limitations. This self-awareness, which is actually a strength, makes them feel like frauds compared to people who confidently claim expertise they don't actually possess. 9. The depth versus breadth trade-off. INFJs make a conscious choice to go deep rather than wide in most areas of their lives. While others are networking, self-promoting, and spreading themselves across multiple surface-level connections. INFJs are diving deep into their chosen interests, relationships, and projects. This depth-first approach naturally leads to being underestimated by people who measure success by more visible, broad-stroke metrics. In a world that often rewards the loudest voice rather than the most insightful one, INFJs' preference for depth can make them seem less accomplished than they actually are. They might have spent years mastering a skill or developing expertise in a particular area, but because they're not broadcasting their achievements, people assume they're less capable than someone who talks a good game but lacks substance. This trade-off is intentional. INFJs would rather be genuinely excellent at a few things than mediocre at many things. They'd rather have 3 deep friendships than 30 shallow ones. They'd rather understand one subject profoundly than have surface-level knowledge of dozens of topics. But this approach makes them easy to underestimate in a culture that often confuses activity with achievement. 10. The emotional labor imbalance. One of the most overlooked reasons INFJs let themselves be underestimated is related to emotional labor. These are people who naturally take on the emotional needs of others, often without being asked. They're the ones who notice when someone's struggling, who remember important details about other people's lives, who create emotional safety in group settings. This emotional labor is incredibly valuable but rarely recognized or compensated. When you're constantly giving this kind of support to others, it's exhausting to also have to advocate for yourself or make sure people understand your other capabilities. It's like they're already working a second job that nobody else can see, so they don't have energy left to make sure they get proper credit for their official contributions. The people who benefit from an INFJ's emotional labor often don't even realize what they're receiving. They just know they feel better after talking to the INFJ, or that somehow things run more smoothly when the INFJ is around. But because this contribution is invisible, the INFJ's overall value to the group gets underestimated even while they're providing crucial support. 11. The strategic advantage of flying under the radar. INFJs have discovered that being underestimated can actually be a strategic advantage in many situations. When people don't see you as competition, they're less likely to try to undermine you or block your progress. When they don't expect much from you, they're pleasantly surprised by your contributions and more likely to give you autonomy to work in your own way. This under-the-radar approach allows INFJs to influence situations without attracting negative attention. They can suggest ideas that get adopted without having to engage in office politics or power struggles. They can help solve problems without getting caught up in who gets credit. They can create positive change without making enemies. In many ways, this approach reflects the INFJ's natural preference for collaboration over competition. They're not trying to win at the expense of others. They're trying to create outcomes that benefit everyone. Being underestimated allows them to focus on results rather than recognition, which aligns perfectly with their values and preferred way of working. 12. The selective revelation strategy. INFJs have mastered the art of selective revelation, choosing carefully when, how, and to whom they reveal their true capabilities. This isn't deception. It's strategic authenticity. They understand that not every situation calls for their full intensity, not every person is ready for their depth, and not every moment is right for their insights. This selective approach serves multiple purposes. It protects their energy by preventing them from casting pearls before swine, as the saying goes. It ensures that when they do reveal their capabilities, it's to people who can appreciate and reciprocate. And it allows them to surprise people at strategic moments when their contributions can have maximum impact. The key is that INFJs are always authentic, but they're not always fully transparent. They'll never pretend to be someone they're not, but they might not reveal everything they are until they feel safe and understood. This gradual unveiling process helps them build relationships that can handle their intensity and complexity. 13. The price of being different. Being an INFJ in a world designed for other personality types comes with a cost. They've learned through painful experience that their natural way of being intuitive, emotional, idealistic is often misunderstood or devalued. Rather than constantly fighting to be accepted for who they are, many INFJs choose to blend in and let people underestimate them. This adaptation makes sense from a survival perspective, but it comes with real consequences. When you constantly hide your light under a bushel, you start to question whether that light is real or valuable. When you repeatedly let others take credit for your ideas or contributions, you begin to internalize the message that your voice doesn't matter. The challenge for INFJs is finding the balance between protecting themselves and honoring their gifts. They need to learn that while not every person or situation deserves their full intensity, they still deserve to be seen and valued for who they truly are. 14. The misunderstood motivations. People often misinterpret an INFJ's tendency to remain in the background as lack of ambition, confidence, or capability. They assume that someone who doesn't self-promote must not have much to promote. But this completely misses the point of what motivates INFJs in the first place. INFJs aren't driven by external validation, status, or recognition in the way that many other types are. They're motivated by meaning, authenticity, and the desire to make a positive impact. When your primary goal is to help others or create something meaningful, getting credit for it becomes secondary. This difference in motivation is often incomprehensible to people who are driven by more external rewards. They can't understand why someone would work hard on something without wanting recognition for it. They assume that anyone who isn't actively seeking the spotlight must not be doing anything worth spotlighting. 15. Breaking the pattern. When INFJs step into their power, the beautiful thing about understanding why INFJs let themselves be underestimated is that it opens the door to conscious choice. Once you recognize the pattern and understand its roots, you can decide when it serves you and when it doesn't. Some INFJs are learning to step more fully into their power while still honoring their need for authenticity and depth. They're finding ways to share their gifts without compromising their values or overwhelming their sensitive systems. They're discovering that they can be visible without being superficial, influential without being manipulative, and recognized without being reduced to simple categories. The key is helping INFJs understand that the world needs what they have to offer. Their depth, insight, and ability to see patterns that others miss are not just personal gifts. They're exactly what our complex, interconnected world desperately needs. When they hide these gifts or let others take credit for them, everyone loses. Conclusion: the tendency of INFJs to let people underestimate them is a complex phenomenon rooted in their unique wiring, life experiences, and values. It's not simply about low self-esteem or lack of confidence. It's a sophisticated adaptation to being different in a world that often doesn't understand or value that difference. Understanding this pattern doesn't mean INFJs need to completely change their approach to life. Their preference for depth over breadth, authenticity over performance, and meaning over recognition are genuine strengths that the world needs more of, not less. However, awareness of this tendency can help INFJs make more conscious choices about when to step forward and when to step back. For the INFJs watching this, remember that your gifts are real and valuable, even if they're not always recognized or understood. You don't have to perform or prove yourself to everyone, but you do deserve to be seen and appreciated for who you truly are. The right people will recognize your worth without you having to diminish yourself to make them comfortable. And for those who know and love INFJs, take a closer look. That quiet person in your life might be carrying wisdom that could change everything, if only they felt safe enough to share it. Sometimes the most powerful people are the ones who never need to tell you how powerful they are. They just quietly go about changing the world, one authentic interaction at a time. The goal isn't for INFJs to become someone they're not. It's for all of us to create a world where their natural gifts are recognized, valued, and given space to flourish. Because when INFJs feel truly seen and appreciated, the depth and insight they bring to our shared human experience becomes a gift that benefits everyone.